The most dangerous weapon is not a gun. It's not a fist. It's your mouth. You want to be respected, heard, understood. Then learn how to talk, because words shape reality. Words build empires, and words destroy them. Some of you think talking is just speaking. That's wrong. Talking is energy. Talking is power. Talking is warfare without fists. If you speak without control, you are weak. If you speak without purpose, you are lost. If you speak too much, you become noise. If you speak too little, you become invisible. Learn to talk like a sword strike, clean, sharp, intentional. Learn to listen like a hunter, silent, observant, patient. You ever walk into a room and someone speaks, and everything stops? That's not magic. That's discipline. That's training. That's learning how to talk with precision and soul. Some of you want to be leaders, but your tongue is sloppy. You joke too much. You talk over people. You speak to impress, not to impact. Control that, or be forgotten. You ever said something and instantly regretted it? That's because your mouth moved faster than your mind. That's a weak warrior. And weak warriors don't survive long. Learn how to talk. Speak with truth. Speak with power. Speak when it matters. The world isn't looking for noise, it's drowning in it. The world is searching for clarity, for voices that don't tremble, for messages that cut through chaos like lightning. Your voice can free a soul or enslave one. Use it right. You want people to follow you. You want to win respect in silence and obedience in sound. Then stop speaking like everyone else. Train your tongue like a weapon. Master your words like your fists. Learn how to talk, and you will never need to shout. Speech is power, not because it's loud, not because it echoes, but because it shapes the world around you. When you open your mouth, you're not just moving air. You're shifting energy. You're commanding attention. You're planting thoughts in people's minds, and if you do it right, you're changing lives. The way you speak tells the world who you are before they even get to know you. Before your resume, before your clothes, before your handshake, it's your words that introduce you. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room and someone just spoke one sentence, and suddenly everyone turned their head? They weren't yelling, they weren't flashy. But the way they spoke, it was like thunder wrapped in calm. They didn't raise their voice, but their voice raised everyone's awareness. That's power. You see, power doesn't always scream. True power whispers with such certainty that people lean in just to catch it. Most people confuse noise with strength. They think the louder they are, the more control they have. But that's just ego on fire. Real control, real authority. It lives in silence before speech, in confidence before conversation, in purpose before pronunciation. Speech is not about words. It's about energy. It's about presence. If you speak and no one feels anything, then all you did was fill the air. But if you speak and hearts move, if thoughts shift, if someone sees themselves differently after hearing you, that's power. And it doesn't come from copying someone else's tone or memorizing fancy vocabulary. It comes from knowing yourself so deeply that when you speak, your words carry the weight of your life. Look at your daily life. How often do you speak with intention? How often do you truly mean what you say? Or are you just reacting, just replying, just filling space? Most people speak to be heard. Few speak to be felt. Even fewer speak to ignite change. but the ones who do. Those are the ones who rise. Those are the ones who walk into job interviews and leave without begging. Those are the ones who calm chaos with a sentence. Those are the ones who can stand in front of a crowd and change the room's temperature just by telling a story. A father comes home after a long day. His kid is acting out, frustrated. Most men would yell. Most would say, "What's wrong with you?" But the one who has learned that speech is power doesn't attack. He connects. He kneels down, looks his child in the eye, and says, "Talk to me, I'm listening." And in that moment, his voice becomes shelter. Not because of volume, but because of value. He gave his words meaning, and the child softens. Not from fear, but from feeling safe. That's speech. That's power. Or imagine a young woman in a meeting full of executives. She's nervous, her hands shaking under the table. But when she speaks, it's not the length of her pitch that captures the room. It's her clarity, her calm. Her words don't rush. They land. Each sentence feels like a hammer shaping steel. Why? Because she believed in what she said. Because she wasn't speaking to impress. She was speaking from something real. That's not just communication. That's command. Every day you're offered moments to speak powerfully, and most people waste them. Someone asks how you're doing and you say, "Fine," even though you're breaking inside. Someone insults you, and you defend yourself with anger, instead of responding with silence that unsettles them more than any comeback. Someone gives you a platform to express yourself, and you downplay your story because you're afraid of sounding too much. But here's the truth. The world isn't destroyed by silence. It's destroyed by meaningless words, by careless speech, by people who've forgotten the weight their voice can carry. Do you know why most people never reach their potential? Because they speak failure into existence before life even gives them a chance. They say, "I'm not good at this," or "I could never be like them," or "I'm just not that lucky." And their words become a prison. Not because someone else locked them in, but because they laid the bricks with every sentence. But the ones who rise, they talk different. Even when life beats them down, they say, "This is not where I end." When they fall, they say, "I needed that fall to sharpen me." When no one believes in them, they say, "Watch me." And they don't scream it. They say it with a calm fire, a steady certainty that makes people stop and listen. Speech is power when it aligns with conviction. It's power when it moves someone. It's power when it speaks truth without fear. And once you learn that, you stop wasting words. You stop speaking just to fill silence. You stop throwing opinions like punches. You begin to speak to elevate, to guide, to strike where it matters. And suddenly, people listen. Not because you're the loudest, but because you're the clearest. Not because you demand attention, but because your words deserve it. Every word you speak is either building something or breaking something. It's either pulling people closer or pushing them away. It's either opening doors or closing them. Once you understand this, you become intentional, deliberate, powerful, not just in conversation, but in life. Less is more. It sounds simple, maybe even boring. But in a world that is constantly shouting, the one who whispers with purpose becomes unforgettable. Most people think the more they say, the more they're understood. But the truth is, the more you speak, the more you dilute the power of your message. Words are like arrows. Each one must have a target. Otherwise, you're just throwing noise into the wind, hoping something sticks. Look around. Everyone's talking. On the phone, on social media, in meetings, at dinner tables. But very few are saying anything that actually matters. Because they've never learned restraint. They've never learned the power of silence between words. They don't realize that when you say too much, people stop listening. The impact gets lost in the overflow. But when you speak with precision, when every sentence is tight, clean, purposeful, it cuts, it lands, it leaves a mark. A warrior doesn't swing wildly. They strike once and it's enough. That's how you need to speak, not constantly, not loudly, not endlessly. But when you do, let every word be a weapon. Let it be sharp, let it be necessary. Think about your daily life. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone just keeps talking, circling the same point, using 100 words when 10 would do? Your brain starts to wander. You check out. Not because they're wrong, but because they're overwhelming the message. But then someone else walks in. They say one sentence. Just one, and it hits you in the chest. You remember it for weeks. Not because it was complicated, but because it was clear. That's the power of less is more. A mother tells her child, "I'm proud of you." Just that. Nothing more. And that child, maybe for the first time in days, smiles like the sun broke through a storm. Not a lecture, not a motivational speech, just a few words. But they were real. They were timed. They were everything. A man gets betrayed by a friend. He wants to rage. He wants to scream. But he looks that friend in the eye and simply says, "I see who you are now." And then walks away. No shouting, no insults, no drama, just clarity. And that sentence haunts more than any outburst ever could. A woman walks into a room full of doubt, full of people ready to dismiss her. And when she speaks, she doesn't try to prove herself. She doesn't over-explain. She simply says, "I've done the work. Let me show you." And then she does. Confidence doesn't need an essay. It only needs truth spoken with calm. Most people speak out of insecurity. They fill the silence because they're uncomfortable in it. They ramble because they think if they keep talking, they won't be questioned. They overcompensate because they don't believe their truth is enough on its own. But someone who has mastered themselves, they know silence is not a void, it's a tool. It's a form of speech in itself. When you say less, you force people to lean in. When you pause, you give weight to your next sentence. When you remove the fluff, you allow your core message to breathe. People remember clarity. They forget clutter. Look at the most iconic moments in history. Speeches, quotes, lines that people tattoo on their skin, carry in their hearts. They're never long. They're short, tight, explosive. Because those who truly understand power never waste energy. They say just enough to change everything. Less is more because it forces you to choose your words like a craftsman selects their tools. It makes you think. It makes you respect the space you occupy. It makes you deadly in conversation because you don't give people a forest to get lost in. You give them a single tree to hold on to. You don't have to keep talking to be heard. You don't have to explain yourself 1,000 times to be understood. You don't have to fill the silence to feel strong. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing. Sometimes the most powerful sentence is the one that ends quickly, but echoes forever. Next time you feel the need to go on and on, stop. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to say? and then say only that. Because when your words carry intention, they don't need a crowd. They don't need a mic. They don't need drama. They just need space. You want to be respected when you speak. Want people to remember what you say? Want to move a room without raising your voice? Then master the art of saying less. Because when you learn to tighten your message, the world has no choice but to listen. And when you make every word count, you become someone whose silence carries more meaning than most people's noise ever could. Control your tongue. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But it is one of the most powerful disciplines a human being can master. In the heat of the moment, when your emotions are boiling, your pride is rising, your ego is screaming for attention, that's when control becomes your sword. Not swinging wildly with words, but holding back, staying still, breathing in the fire instead of spitting it out. That's strength. Every day we wake up with choices. The choice to speak life or spit poison. The choice to uplift or destroy. Most people don't even realize how dangerous their own mouth is. They think wars are started with weapons. No, wars begin with words. Relationships end with words. Trust shatters with words. People carry wounds in their hearts, not from knives, but from the tongues of people who claim to love them. Your words are energy. Every syllable carries weight. Say the wrong thing at the wrong time, and you can burn bridges you spent years building. Speak in anger, and you'll say things that bury deeper than fists ever could. You can apologize 100 times, but words once spoken can never be pulled back. That's why the strongest man isn't the one who fights back. It's the one who holds his tongue when his whole body is begging for retaliation. Imagine this. A man gets insulted in front of a crowd. All eyes are on him. The room waits for him to explode. His fists clench. His breath shortens. He could ruin the other person with one sentence. He has the words, the facts, the fire. But instead, he looks at the person and says, "You don't define me," and walks away. Power isn't loud. Power is silent restraint. It's knowing you can destroy but choosing not to. Think about arguments you've had. Moments when you were right and you knew it, but you kept pushing, kept probing, kept speaking. Until the point you were right no longer mattered. Your need to win overtook your need for peace. And after the dust settled, you didn't feel victorious. You felt empty. Because you let your tongue lead your emotions, instead of letting wisdom guide your mouth. A mother in a grocery store. Her child is screaming, throwing a tantrum. People are watching, judging. She feels the rage building. She wants to yell, wants to scream louder than the child just to make it stop. But instead, she kneels, whispers softly, holds the child close. Her voice is calm. Her words are few, and slowly, the chaos calms. That's control. That's leadership, not domination through volume, but influence through peace. A leader stands before their team. Things are falling apart. Deadlines missed. Tension rising. One wrong word and the team collapses into blame and fear. But the leader chooses words carefully, speaks slowly, acknowledges the pain without adding to it, redirects the focus, builds with truth, not guilt. And that team, instead of fracturing, becomes stronger. Because the tongue was used to shape, not shatter. Control your tongue when you're angry, when you're hurt, when you're insecure. Especially when you're tempted to speak, just to prove you're still strong. Real strength is knowing you don't have to say everything you feel. Real intelligence is knowing which feelings don't deserve words. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. It's knowing when your words will build and when they will burn. Some people never reach greatness because their own mouths sabotage them. They gossip. They lie. They speak before thinking. They give away their plans. They insult in insecurity. They think being blunt is being brave, not realizing that truth without love is just cruelty in disguise. Learn to filter your thoughts. Not everything deserves a voice. Not every opinion needs to be shared. Not every moment is a stage for your ego. In your daily life, start noticing how much damage is caused by careless words. A boss says something harsh without thinking, and a good employee loses confidence. A friend jokes a little too far, and the other one carries the sting for years. A partner says something in the heat of the moment, and suddenly love feels like a battlefield. All because the tongue was faster than the heart. Before you speak, ask yourself, what is the purpose of these words? Will they heal or hurt? Will they bring clarity or just noise? Will they reveal wisdom or expose immaturity? Will they show self-control or just a lack of discipline? The tongue can be a flame or a foundation. It can light up a soul or burn it to ash. Your reputation, your influence, your relationships, your peace, all of them are built or broken by how you use your mouth. So sharpen your tongue not to cut others, but to carve meaning. Train your speech not for attention, but for intention. The one who can control their tongue can control their destiny and the world. It listens not to the one who talks the most, but to the one whose words strike deepest with the least noise. Silence is a weapon, not the kind that breaks bones or spills blood, but the kind that disarms chaos, confuses enemies, and builds inner power so deep it doesn't need to shout to be heard. Most people think silence is weakness, that if you're not loud, you're not strong. But that's the illusion the noisy world sells. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, it watches, it listens. Silence isn't the absence of power. Silence is power under control. Every day people get trapped in battles of noise. They argue, defend, scream to be understood, explain themselves over and over, hoping their voice will fix what silence never could. But here's the truth. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response. Silence makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to hear their own noise. It holds up a mirror, and most don't like what they see. You walk into a room, and someone tries to provoke you. Maybe they insult you. Maybe they mock your success. Maybe they question your worth. Your instinct is to clap back, to defend your name, to spit words like fire. But then you pause. You look at them, not with fear, not with hate, but with a calm they can't understand. And you say nothing. Their words hang in the air, desperate for a fight, but you don't feed it. That's silence. That's control. That's dominance without aggression. They were ready for war, but you left them standing on a battlefield you refused to enter. In a world where everyone is desperate to be heard, the silent one becomes a mystery. And mystery is power. People don't fear what they can predict. They fear what they can't read. When you speak too much, you give away your position, your plan, your weakness. When you stay silent, you observe, you learn, you calculate. And when you finally speak, your words carry the weight of thought, not just emotion. Think about the most dangerous storms. They don't start with noise. They start with stillness, that eerie calm before the chaos. Silence is preparation. It's storing your energy while others waste theirs. It's letting fools expose themselves while you stay grounded. In arguments, silence is often the highest ground. When they go low with insults, you go quiet with grace. When they shout to be right, you stay silent to stay wise. A man once sat in a meeting while others ridiculed his ideas. They laughed, dismissed him, said he was dreaming too big. He didn't argue. He didn't plead for their approval. He just nodded, took notes, and kept working. Months later, his idea became the foundation of a multi-million-dollar project. And the same voices that mocked him, they were silent now. Because silence doesn't prove them wrong, results do. When you trust your path, you don't have to defend it. You just walk it. A woman goes through heartbreak. Her partner betrays her, spreads lies, tries to destroy her peace. People expect her to fight back, to post her truth online, to drag him in the mud. Instead, she says nothing. She rebuilds, silently. Months pass. She's glowing, successful. And the same crowd that watched her in pain is now in awe of her transformation. Because silence wasn't her surrender. It was her sanctuary. It was where she met her strength, not in the noise of revenge, but in the stillness of self-respect. Silence is also a test. When you're misunderstood, can you stay silent and let time reveal the truth? When you're angry, can you hold your words and protect what matters more? Your peace or your pride? When you're doubted, can you resist the urge to prove and let your actions speak louder than your mouth ever could? Even in daily life, silence has weight. You're with someone, and there's a moment of tension. Instead of rushing to fill the gap with apologies or excuses, you stay silent. And in that pause, emotions settle. Clarity enters. Silence becomes space for truth to breathe. Sometimes, the most honest conversations happen in silence. Because in silence, there's no performance, no script, just presence. Some of the wisest people you'll ever meet aren't the ones talking the most. They're the ones who say the least, but when they speak, the room listens. Not because they're loud, but because their silence before speaking gave their words authority. They don't waste language. They don't argue to win. They let their silence create questions in others. And in that space, they control the energy. The problem is, people confuse silence with surrender. They think if you're quiet, you're weak. But real warriors don't fight every battle. They choose them. They know some fights drain you more than losing ever could. So they stay silent, not because they can't fight, but because the war isn't worth the scars. And that's where silence becomes a weapon. Not one that harms others, but one that protects your soul. Next time you feel the pull to react, pause. Listen. Let silence speak first, because in the quiet, you'll hear what emotion tries to hide. You'll find the answer behind the anger. You'll see the strategy behind the storm. And while others burn out in the noise, you'll rise in the silence, untouched, unfazed, unshaken. Listen to strike, not to reply, not to react, not to prove a point or defend your pride. Listen like a warrior watches his enemy before a move. Calm, still, alert, focused. Too many people hear words, but don't understand the silence between them. They hear noise, but miss the message. They reply too quickly, not realizing every reaction is a weapon being given away too soon. In life, the loudest person in the room often knows the least. They speak to dominate. But real strength isn't in domination. It's in discipline. When you truly listen, you gather intelligence. You read tone, body language, hesitation. You understand what is not being said, And that's where the strike lies, not in volume, not in fast replies, but in timing, sharp timing. Think about the cobra. It watches, it waits, it listens with every fiber of its being. Its body still, its breath slow. It doesn't attack because it's angry. It attacks because it's ready. It doesn't waste its venom on shadows. It saves it for the threat that matters. Most people, they throw words like wild punches. They swing without thinking, and when they miss, they look foolish. But the one who listens, they strike once, and it lands. Imagine someone criticizing you in front of a crowd, calling you names, challenging your intelligence. You feel the heat rise in your chest, the instinct to fight back, to prove yourself right. But you breathe. You don't react. You listen, and you see it. Their insecurity disguised as confidence, their fear hiding behind their loud voice. So you don't respond with words. You respond with presence. Calm, grounded. You own the room not by overpowering, but by not needing to. There's something unsettling about someone who listens deeply. Because people expect a reaction. They crave it. When you don't give them what they expect, they lose power, and you gain control. In negotiation, in arguments, in relationships. The one who listens better holds the blade. Because while others are focused on being heard, you're focused on understanding. And when you understand, you can't be manipulated. You see the whole board, not just one move. There's a story of a young fighter who challenged an old master. The young one was fast, aggressive, spoke big words, made loud threats. The master said nothing, just observed. The young man shouted, danced, tried to provoke, but the master waited. Then, with one precise move, the fight was over. Not because the young one lacked power, but because he lacked patience. He listened only to reply. The master listened to strike. Everyday life is no different. You're at work. Someone disrespects you in a meeting. They want to make you look weak. You could respond instantly, try to win the room. Or you could wait, listen, read the situation. And then, when the time is right, you speak one sentence, not loud, but so direct, so clear, that it cuts through the room like lightning. That's not arrogance. That's power earned through patience. In relationships, people argue to win, not to understand. Two people yelling, nobody listening. Both trying to strike without studying. But when one person listens, truly listens, they hear the hurt behind the anger. They hear the fear behind the blame. And instead of reacting, they respond with clarity. That's how you turn chaos into connection. By listening not just with your ears, but with your spirit. Think of the samurai, poised, centered. They do not draw the sword without purpose. Their strength lies not just in their skill, but in their awareness. They listen to the air, to footsteps, to energy. They don't waste a move. They don't waste a word. When they speak, it means something. When they move, it ends something. You must become that kind of listener. Sharp, focused, deadly in your silence. People around you will talk too much. They'll try to get under your skin. They'll bait you into battles that don't serve you. They'll expect you to match their chaos. But you must be different. You must watch like a hawk. Listen like a wolf in the woods. Not passive, strategic. Every word they say is a clue, a reveal, a weakness exposed. If you rush to speak, you miss it. But if you listen, you'll know exactly where to strike. The world doesn't reward the noisy. It rewards the wise. And wisdom comes from stillness, from listening before acting, from collecting more than you give. In business, the best leaders speak last. In conflict, the strongest person doesn't shout, they calculate. They let the storm pass, and when the air clears, they make their move. One move. Clean. Final. You have to train yourself. Not just to hear words, but to decode them. To sense the energy beneath them. To see the insecurity in the brag, the pain in the insult, the fear in the threat. And then, when you decide to speak, your words become arrows. They don't just fly, they hit. Because you weren't rushing to talk. You were waiting to strike. So next time someone talks too much, argues too loud, tries too hard to control the moment, don't compete with their noise. Compete with your silence. Listen so well that when you speak, even silence listens back. That's how you dominate without being aggressive. That's how you win wars without starting them. Not by being the loudest, but by being the most dangerous listener in the room. Speak with purpose. Don't just talk because your mouth is open. Don't just make noise because you're uncomfortable with silence. Every word you say is a seed. Plant carelessly, and you grow weeds. Plant deliberately, and you grow forests. Most people waste their words on things that don't matter. Gossip, complaints, empty boasts. They throw words like confetti, hoping something will stick, but never knowing what they're really saying. And then they wonder why no one listens to them. They wonder why their words hold no weight. It's because purpose was never in their voice, only noise. Purpose starts from within. You don't need a perfect vocabulary. You don't need to speak like a poet, but you must mean what you say. Feel it in your gut. Every sentence should move something, shift a mind, break a wall, build a bridge. People respect those who speak with clarity, because in a world full of echo, truth stands out. When you speak with purpose, even silence bends to listen. Think about the power of a mother's words when her child is in danger. She doesn't recite poetry. She doesn't need a script. Her voice alone can stop chaos, because it comes from love, from urgency, from purpose. You can feel the weight of her truth. That's the kind of energy you need when you speak. Not rehearsed, not fake, but raw and intentional. Purpose isn't about volume. It's about direction. A whisper can carry more force than a shout if it's spoken with the right energy. There are people who speak once in a room and shift the entire atmosphere. Not because they're loud, but because they've aligned their words with their beliefs. When you know who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going, your words become fire. They burn through doubt. They ignite belief. Everyday examples are all around you. You're in a meeting. Everyone's throwing around ideas, afraid of silence, afraid of not sounding smart. And then one person waits, watches, and finally speaks. One sentence, clean, sharp, and suddenly the whole room turns. Because they didn't just speak to fill the air. They spoke to cut through the noise. That's purpose. It's not how many words you say. It's how precise they are, like a blade. Look at the best coaches in sports. They don't scream every second. They wait for the right moment. Halftime, a timeout. And then, with a few focused words, they awaken a fire in their team. Not because they're magical, but because they understand the power of timing and intention. Every sentence they speak carries belief. Every word says, "We're not done yet." That's what purpose looks like in real time. On the street, in business, in relationships, the same rule applies. Speak to heal, not to hurt. Speak to build, not just to be heard. People can sense your energy. If you speak just to be liked, they'll feel it. If you speak from truth, they'll respect it. You don't need to impress. You need to impact. Even if only one person hears you, if your words change them, you've done more than 1,000 empty speeches ever could. Most people run from silence because silence exposes their lack of clarity. But when you know your purpose, you don't fear silence. You own it. You use it. You let it build tension until your words break through like thunder. Pause before you speak. Feel your message. Align it with your values. And then drop it like a bomb. People remember those who speak from the soul, not those who perform, those who declare. You ever see someone give a speech and the whole room is crying? It's not because of perfect grammar or clever phrases. It's because the speaker bled truth. They didn't try to impress. They connected. They peeled back the mask and shared the storm inside. That's what moves people. Not polish, not perfection, but purpose. When you speak, picture every word like an arrow. Where are you aiming? Are you firing wildly, hoping to hit something? Or are you calm, steady, eyes fixed on the target? Speak like every sentence is your last. Like it's the only chance you have to light a fire in someone who's on the edge. Because maybe, just maybe, they needed to hear exactly what you had to say. A man once stood in a courtroom and defended his life with 12 words. He didn't rant. He didn't beg. He just spoke his truth, and it saved him. Not because it was loud, not because it was long, but because it was real. Sometimes the most powerful speech is the one that doesn't try to be powerful. It just is. So think before you speak, not because you're afraid, but because you respect the weight of your voice. You never know who's listening. Someone may be hanging on by a thread, and your words could pull them back or push them over the edge. Speak with awareness. Speak with focus. Speak with the intention to wake something up in the world, because when you do, your words stop being just sounds. They become legacy. They become movement. They become unstoppable energy set loose in the world. Emotions are fuel, not the fire. Too many people let their emotions take the driver's seat. They feel anger and lash out. They feel fear and run away. They feel doubt and stay silent. But emotions are not meant to control you. They're meant to energize you. They are signals, not shackles. If you let them guide your actions blindly, you'll crash every single time. But if you learn to harness them, to convert them into energy without letting them burn you down, then you become untouchable. Imagine a car engine. Fuel makes it move, but if that fuel leaks and catches fire, the same power becomes destruction. Emotions are that fuel. They can push you forward or explode if you don't contain them. The choice is always yours. You don't kill the emotion. You direct it. You aim it like a blade, sharp and clean. When you're angry, ask yourself, what can I build with this heat instead of what can I burn down? When you're hurt, ask, what truth does this pain reveal, and how can I rise from it sharper, calmer, more unshakable? Have you ever seen someone lose everything in a moment because they couldn't hold their tongue in an emotional storm? A boss gets under their skin. A partner says something that cuts deep and boom. They throw it all away in one emotional explosion. But there are others who walk through the same fire and come out with their head high. Not because they don't feel it, but because they master it. They hold their fire until it becomes light, not destruction. You can feel everything and still choose control. Let that sink in. You can be boiling inside, heart pounding, breath heavy, and still choose to pause, to breathe, to speak with clarity instead of chaos. That's not weakness, that's power. Real power isn't loud, it's quiet. It's that calm inside a storm that everyone envies but few can build. It's forged by experience, by reflection, by mastering yourself again and again when the world gives you every reason to lose it. You wake up one morning and everything is against you. Bills, arguments, rejections, doubt. Your emotions are screaming. They want to break something, yell, run, quit. But instead, you show up, you breathe, you focus. You use that chaos as fuel to get better, to get sharper. That's strength. Not giving in to the first feeling that rises in your chest, but understanding that feelings come and go like tides. They aren't facts. They aren't permanent. They aren't you. They're weather patterns. And you are the sky. You hold all of it without becoming any of it. Some of the greatest minds, the strongest warriors, the most unshakable leaders, they didn't become great by avoiding emotion. They became great because they transformed emotion into purpose. When pain came, they didn't fold. They listened to it, learned from it, turned it into firepower. When fear showed up, they looked it in the eye and moved forward anyway. Not because they were fearless, but because they were driven. They knew fear is just a signpost that you're getting closer to something that matters. Think of a sculptor with a block of marble. Frustration, impatience, self-doubt. These are all part of the process. But he doesn't throw the chisel and walk away. He leans into it. He uses every blow to shape something real. That's you. Your emotions are tools, not chains. You are sculpting your character every single time you respond to life. People think the goal is to feel nothing, but that's not human. The goal is to feel everything and still stand, still speak truth, still walk forward. You'll be shaken, you'll be pulled, you'll want to scream. But in that space between emotion and action, that tiny gap where you pause, breathe, and choose, that's where greatness is born. Take a daily example. Someone cuts you off in traffic, your blood spikes, heart rate jumps. You want to react, honk, shout, chase. But why? For what? You hand your peace over to a stranger. You give them your control. Now imagine taking that same heat and laughing it off, moving forward. Not because it didn't bother you, but because it wasn't worth your energy. You just kept your power. You just proved you're not a puppet of emotion. You're the master of your response. Or you're in a conversation. Someone tries to provoke you, discredit you, challenge you. You feel anger rising. But instead of snapping, you pause, smile. You answer with truth, not temper. You show class in chaos, and people watch. They respect that, because anyone can explode, but few can stay composed. And in that moment, you become unforgettable. The world respects discipline more than drama. It listens more to calm certainty than loud panic. Emotions will always exist, but you get to decide whether they power your purpose or sabotage it. Fire can warm your house or burn it down. Same flame, different focus. So when you feel emotion rising, don't bury it. Don't let it hijack you either. Breathe into it, command it, use it. Speak through it with intention and direction, not noise and destruction. That's how warriors are made, not by never feeling, but by never falling to what they feel. When the storm rises and the world screams for your reaction, pause, not because you're weak, but because you're in control. In that silence, you own the moment. You see, anyone can talk loud, anyone can shout back, but few can speak with presence, with purpose, with clarity that cuts deeper than noise. The man who controls his tongue controls the battlefield, and the person who leads with calm will always outlast the one who leads with chaos. You were not born to react, you were born to respond with power. And power is quiet. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't rush to prove. It just is. The sharpest sword doesn't swing wildly. It waits, it watches, and it strikes only when needed. In a world full of noise, be the one whose silence demands attention. In a crowd full of panic, be the one whose presence creates peace. Never forget your words are seeds. Every sentence you speak plants something in someone. Some words destroy, some build. Some cut, some heal. And in every conversation, you're either starting a fire or watering a garden. Ask yourself every time, what am I planting right now? Are my words a weapon, or are they wisdom? There is a line between sounding strong and being strong. Real strength is when your energy doesn't get hijacked by opinions, insults, or misunderstandings. When you know yourself so well, you don't need to explain your every move to people who only want to misunderstand you. Speak less. Move more. Show results. Let your presence say what words never can. You want to change your life. Learn to talk to yourself like a warrior, not a victim. Your inner dialogue sets the tone for your external world. You tell yourself you're not enough. You'll walk like you're not enough. You tell yourself you've got what it takes, even when it's dark. You'll start to see a path. Remind yourself daily, I am not here to compete. I am here to dominate my own growth. I'm not here to react, I'm here to rise. I'm not here to survive, I'm here to evolve. People will test you, life will test you, emotions will roar inside your chest. But in those moments, breathe, say less, watch more, act with precision. You don't owe every opinion your energy. Not every fight deserves your fire. Walk away when needed. Speak when it matters. And when you speak, let every word hit like thunder and move like water. Calm, powerful, undeniable. Look at the greats. They weren't the loudest. They weren't the flashiest. They were the most focused, the ones who didn't waste words. The ones who knew when to speak and when to let silence echo louder than noise. They mastered the art of speech not to impress others, but to elevate themselves and everyone around them. Be that. Be unforgettable, not because you shouted louder, but because you spoke with so much truth that people felt it in their bones. The goal isn't to be heard. The goal is to be felt. And when your words come from a place of deep power, they don't just echo, they transform. Speak with intention. Pause with purpose. Listen with respect. And walk with such inner strength that people feel safer just standing next to your presence. Remember, wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools speak because they have to say something. Let your voice be an extension of your mind, not a reaction of your mood. Speak to build, not to break. Speak to inspire, not to impress. Speak like every word matters, because it does. And when you master this, when your voice becomes a force of peace, a signal of strength, and a carrier of truth, you won't need to demand respect. Your presence will command it. Because when you speak from the soul, you don't just talk, you move mountains. And people don't just listen, they change.